Welcome back to the Canadian Gun Vault. My name is Mark Morelli. This is Behind the Vault Door. And tonight's podcast topic is going to be something I did a little bit of reading about today. There's absolutely nothing funny about it other than the response we're going to get, which will probably be severe and draconian in its nature. As gun owners, anytime you hear of a mass shooting of any kind, you cringe. And I've talked about this in previous podcasts. You know, there's a certain shame connected to firearm ownership, socially speaking. And the shame level has dropped substantially in the last 5 to 10 years. It's been actually a really fun process to watch. You know, you can see a lot of barriers breaking down. The firing ranges that typically were filled with predominantly white male, roughneck types, have been replaced with people from all walks of life, just a multitude of ethnic backgrounds, and there's no question that the diversity of the Canadian firearm community is incredible. The new batch of shooters that are coming in aren't even opposed to the idea of engaging in multiple activities, which I've always believed has been the firearm community's worst shortcoming, is the need to get really good at one thing and try nothing else, and or turn your nose up at everything else. I'm seeing just a new breed of shooter that want to try all of it, and it's so awesome to grab guys and bring them over to the pistol range for the first time, and to watch their eyes light up when they see how bad they are at 20 feet. And I could see why a lot of guys would get discouraged fast, but so many people have spent just a little bit of time on the firing line, in the handgun action range sections of courses and whatnot. To shoot at things really close up fast can be a lot of fun. To slow right down and to do bullseye shooting can be very relaxing. Anybody who's ever shot a gun, really accurately, will tell you that it does require a certain degree of, patience and skill and comfort. But anyway, amongst all these great people in the firearm community, we've got, just this general sort of sensation that anytime there's a mass shooting, and we're just going to come back to that, anytime there's a mass shooting, that somehow, we told them it wasn't going to happen, and now it did. I mean, like, it's not our fault, to hear that there's been, another mass shooting in the United States, to see people cringe up here and say, ooh, I don't want that happening up here. That's fine. Certainly I hearing about a mass shooting always makes me just feel horrible. It means somebody has gone completely off the rails, and they're not normal. I don't see anybody I know, who's out there enjoying themselves, losing their marbles, and doing the kind of things that I'm seeing out there. So I'd be really curious to know, what the identity of the shooter is, and depending on what background he's from, or it just seems like there have been some mass shootings. Like we did have one in Canada. There was one in a mosque, and I really didn't hear much about it. And I found that to be very odd. As a former police officer, I can tell you that somebody always talks, and there's going to be, some word leaked, and or the media have to be told something. And yet, I've never seen a more quiet, event of that nature. To have a mass shooting and then to suddenly have what appears to be very little information, some very interesting conflicting information. Some of the first reports I saw that, and I watched, the news fairly closely at times, and I happened to be watching when that happened, and I saw that the first initial reports included, some language used by the shooter that, some people might recognize. And there being two shooters, and them finding somebody in a snowbank with what appeared to be an AK-47, or a VZ-58 type rifle. I'd be really interested to know, the exact make and model that was used. And I mean, the second person apparently was in the snowdrift with the rifle when the police showed up, and yet was let go. And obviously, they didn't have quite enough evidence to either hold him or charge him with something. But I was genuinely surprised to see that cleared up so fast. I mean, I would think that if you found somebody in a snowbank with a rifle, that there'd probably be a pretty lengthy investigation into, what were you doing there with the gun, right after we show up. It really is somewhat suspicious. And, to kick that guy loose and to suddenly have the whole situation seemingly go dark, as a former police officer, I would say that's kind of odd. And, a lot of our listeners have brought it to my attention. I don't mean to put on a tinfoil hat here, folks, but I think it's entirely possible that, yeah, you might be onto something. Like every once in a while, so, a dog will find a bone. I don't know. For the tinfoil hat guys out there, I gotta kind of agree with you on this one. Something strange going on there. And then, of course, we have mass shootings in the U.S., and there's always something, weird about those. And I mean, we've spoken about those before. You've got the Las Vegas shooting, and suddenly there's, two shooters and somebody out in the hallway that gets shot, but maybe not really. Maybe he's part of it. So many conversations about, the exact gun that was used and how did he get all those guns in there. Apparently he had like an entire arsenal stockpiled up there, and yet, I mean, it's in a casino, the place is filled with cameras, and all of a sudden we've got nothing again. I would think that by now, if they can catch somebody like tipping their cards just a little bit, like 1 millimeter too high and or pulling some stunts at a casino, and they could see that, I find it hard to believe that they would miss the guy walking, an armory up to a hotel room and not have some footage of that. At least him coming and going by himself. But it's magically all kind of disappeared. I haven't heard any new reports. I don't know, maybe somebody can correct me. Feel free to contact us at the Canadian Gun Vault Inc. at gmail.com. Sorry, I just need to take a drink for a second. So we've had this mass shooting. Again, another one. In the U.S. and Texas. The identity of the shooter, I think, is still questionable. I haven't read anything very specific yet. I had one of my friends contact me. He's usually pretty close to accurate before it's even released. He's pretty good at predicting some things. But he seemed to be fairly confident that the shooter was Antifa. And I'm seeing a lot of jokes floating around very quickly, that liberals are shooting at us now. I've always maintained that the liberal-minded governments have always wanted to take as many firearms as they could away, and there didn't seem to be any real rhyme or reason or intelligence behind it. When they did it, and a lot of the rules made like zero sense and made things way more complicated than they need to be, and were subject to like wild, varying degrees of interpretation. So, and all again stemming from, perhaps being advised by people that know nothing about the law or guns. So, it'll bring us right back to the advisory committee is a sham, and nobody's really done anything about it. And I've heard all kinds of different things, like there's absolutely nothing that can be done about it. I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that you could fill a panel full of people so obviously biased and hating the thing that they're going to be advising about, and arguably know nothing about it from not a technical sense, not an experience sense. Outside of they just don't like guns, their knowledge base of firearms is fairly limited. And, here we are insisting that they know the bare minimum, and they're saying no. The fact that nothing's being done about that, I would think in a free, democratic society, that you would be able to say something, and I like to draw comparisons, and some people may, slam me for this one, but I mean, if we were making policy on something, controversial, I'll pick homosexuality, right? If we were going to select a panel of people that were going to advise on laws that relate to homosexuality, and we filled the panel of people tasked with advising the government on changes in law affecting the homosexual community, if we filled that committee with a bunch of redneck homophobes. How comfortable would the homosexual community feel? And I'm really sorry if I miss out the LGBTQ, gay, queer. I'm sorry. Like I try and keep up. It's really, and I don't mean this to be sarcastic, but it's really difficult to keep up when they keep coming up with new alphabetical letters to represent these subgroupings. And I mean, I got mad respect for the gay community. I've met a number of people that in my years that were just amazing personalities, and I love seeing them out in the line. You know, it really becomes kind of difficult at times, to keep everybody happy. But the truth is I know you can't, but I try. Anyway, if you were to fill that committee with those, homophobic, completely lacking in objectivity, arguably, morally wrong people, that would judge the homosexual community and would do anything they could to restrict it. And no matter how good you were, would you allow that? I mean, would you allow that committee to exist? If you were, in the grouping of homosexuals looking at that committee, you would probably say, hey, like that doesn't seem very fair. That doesn't seem very, Canadian. Why can't something be done about that? I'm sure that the homosexual community would be outraged and there would be massive protests. And I know there's quite a few gun owners out there. So I'm going to just say it. Something would get done if, 10,000 of us showed up on Parliament Hill. Hey, guess what? We see what's coming. We don't like it, so we're here to protest it. I mean, everybody else does it. As conservative people, we tend to not really want to do it. Over the years, I've seen, varying degrees of involvement from people wanting to see change. And there's been a lot of things thrown around. Like if you're not willing to, write your member of parliament, if you can't pick up a pen and a piece of paper and, write a short letter saying that I don't agree with firearm owners being characterized as, serial killers potential and treated poorly and unfairly. I think that if you wouldn't take a moment to actually pick up a pen and do that, then perhaps there's a problem. If you're not willing to get in your car, take a drive. Go to Ottawa. Let's pick a day. I really do feel that a rally's in order. I mean, if we've got some crap coming down the pike, why not beat it to the punch? I say we get ahead of this thing. Calling a rally, I think, is something that should happen. I shouldn't be the one to call it, though. I'm not a lobby group leader. The Canadian Gun Vault is an entertainment system. We deliver photography and, sometimes, some really great YouTube videos. My partner Dave sometimes gets frustrated with me. I haven't been shooting in a while, and I definitely needed to take a break from the filming because it felt a lot like work in many ways. Because you want to get the video done, but at the same time, you're trying to have a good time, and it's difficult because you kind of juggle talking about the guns while you're shooting the guns or trying to hit. And to have it go smoothly. And I mean, I don't like to do multiple takes. I'm not going to say I give up easy, but I can tell Dave gets frustrated, and then all of a sudden, we've got problems. But, I really do want to return to the filming, and I'm going to do that. I would ask everybody just be a little bit more patient with me because there's just so much going on. We're really looking to deliver something special by Remembrance Day to you guys out there, and in the Instagram world and the podcast world, SoundCloud, and you guys have been great. I love that you keep listening to me. If we can continue to get the word out there that Canadian gun owners are not the problem, the Liberal government that we currently have seems to be taking a horrible stance against us. I think we're poised actually for some really positive change. I really do. I think that seeing the direction of education for the general public, for the leadership of the country, I think that we've done a pretty good job letting the correct people know. That we're fantastic, fine Canadian citizens. So we're primed for some really great change if we can just get a conservative government in power in 2019. I see a lot of people, in the Conservative Party that seem to really understand that the firearm community has been kind of mistreated over the years. So if we can make a strong go the next election season, we could see some things, turning back, getting some things back, maybe making some changes you won't like. I mean, I think that's important to note, in the interest of public safety, and I'm always thinking that way first. There are going to be some things that are probably going to have to change a little bit. Not like, what we're accustomed to. Like when they drop the hammer, usually it makes us all go, oh, Jesus. I've talked about the reclassification of the SKS and, what I see potentially coming. And I've had people tell me that, hey, false flag, come on. I can tell you right now, I still really strongly believe that that's coming. That study done by the RCMP 3 years ago didn't magically evaporate. And now we have, a government that wants to make a big ding, on the firearm community. And what better place to start than the SKS? I mean, if we let them get away with that one, then they can pretty much get away with any of the little guys, because the SKS is everywhere. And I think the big danger for people, when confronted with the idea that you will either register the gun or, you will become a criminal. And so there's probably going to be a number of people, and we never endorse this sort of thing here on the Canadian Gun Vault, but there'll be a number of people that will opt not to register the guns, thinking that the government may turn around next season, should they take the win, and say, well, you know what, we don't really like you guys having those. Now that we know where they are, we're going to ban them, and you have to turn them in for destruction. That is typically what has happened in the past. That you were the request was made that you bring your gun in, just bring it in. We just want to know you have it. That's all. Hey, you shouldn't have a problem with that. And then banning it like 18 months later, which, we're not going to fall for it again. I'll tell you that much. But I think, though, that it's really important to get ourselves onto the Hill. I would look to, Tony Bernardo, the CSSA, and Tracy Wilson at the CCFR. I'm sure they're doing great things for the firearm community. I haven't been paying attention lately. I did see, a couple of posts I really liked. If you haven't been following, the CCFR, I believe that Tracy and a friend are spending some time in the schools talking to students about the firearm community and, firearms and firearm safety, all very important things. And, some of the kids are leaving the classroom apparently, questioning, the difference between, good people that use guns and bad ones. I mean, it's a simple concept. You do have police and military. You would hope they're good people, carrying firearms, and we trust them. Apparently this mass shooting in Texas was stopped by a citizen with a firearm, which seems to be a huge leverage point for the firearm community in the U.S. They keep seeing these events happening, and they get stopped by people that are not police. We're seeing more and more of that, and there is some suggestion that a citizen, some armed civilian who had a permit, I guess, to have a gun, depending on on why he may have had it, and if he did have permission. Permits in the United States are obtainable. Concealed carry permits seem to be more of the norm these days than open carry. I've been to states with both. It's actually quite fascinating to see somebody kind of bend over and you see the gun kind of sticking out. It's a different environment in the U.S. The guns are everywhere, and that door hasn't really been opened here. And that's something that the gun community is always saying, like we will become like them. It's a scare tactic. We have these laws in place. Certainly, people aren't allowed to carry guns. People are in possession of it. They're out there. If somebody wanted to carry a gun, they could. The legal firearm community chooses not to. We obey the rules. The criminal element that does not obtain their firearms legitimately through, their black market means, they're completely unaffected by the law. So, you've got, different groups of people out there. But to impose a law that suddenly might make the SKS a prohibit, maybe they'll create a new class, 12-8 class, 12-9 class. It's really stupid. They've got all these classes. They keep on adding to them. It's making things more complicated than it needs to be. And that seems to be the signature, the hallmark feature of the Liberal government is let's make it as complicated as possible and cost as much as possible and really have no impact. Whether you're a gun fan or not, I'm not a huge fan of the Liberal government and the way they've been conducting themselves lately. Like we've got some real problems up there. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased and I'm only reading the news that's bad. Maybe there's some good stuff out there I'm missing. If somebody gets it, please send it to me. I haven't seen any yet. Everything that I hear coming out of the government's mouth these days is like a disaster. So I'm thinking, spend a little time, watching the parliamentary sessions. You'll learn to get frustrated. I don't know how those people control themselves. I mean, I listened to the parliamentary sessions and I could see, what appear to be straightforward questions asked by the Conservative Party leadership. And like, we're not getting answers. The Liberal government seems to be very fond of dancing in circles and answering at French at the right moments. I would have loved to have heard some of the translations on some of these things. Apparently, the ethics commissioner is still investigating Prime Minister Trudeau. I mean, like, how long ago was that? Like, how many years does it take to complete an investigation? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I would think that most people could have that wrapped up in 6 months. Like, I mean, did he do it? Did you get on the plane or the helicopter rather? Were the rules broken here? Like, I mean, you either were or you weren't on it. I mean, like, what's the deal? And then, of course, there's the let's hide behind the RCMP. Well, the RCMP makes the determination. And, of course, nobody wants to question the RCMP. What's going on there? Okay, so you're telling me that the RCMP broke the rules then. Okay, we're going to ask them why. I haven't heard much, about that. I would like to think that we get some answers on that sometime soon before we, allow more and more of our money to be spent as taxpayers. I would put a stop on everything, quite frankly. I think it's necessary. I mean, if we've got major questions of ethical conduct going unanswered for extended periods of time, there's a reason for that. So we should straighten that out before you guys kind of do anything more. And then if they don't do that, then you know what? I think, like, as a nation, we should be concerned. So I hate to be that guy. But again, I'm going to call for a rally. I would like to speak to Tracy Wilson and or Tony Bernardo and discuss the possibility of calling a rally at some point in the not too distant future. I think it's really a good idea. And I don't know that it's one that everyone will agree with, but, it'd be nice to have people kind of get together. Let's, make a little noise at Parliament. Anyway, that's about all I have for tonight's episode of Behind the Vault Door. Again, thank you so much for listening. Hope you guys have had a great weekend. Good night.